Hey everybody, welcome to the DDC Studios YouTube channel. This is DDC Studios owner and publisher David Hayner. And today's video is, excuse me, a little more of a serious topic than we usually do here on the channel. But before we get that underway, as always, got to remind you to hit that sub button, ring the bell for notifications, smash that like button, and as always, please feel free to leave a comment down below. Okay, we got that out of the way. Some recent events, especially over last week and through this weekend, kind of caused me to really have an epiphany. And it really has to do with the canceling of comic book creators. And, you know, just other folks, really. I should say creators, whether they be actors, musicians, but more specifically comic book creators. No matter whether they're in the small press like I am, the more high-profile indie comic press, or even mainstream comics. And really, gosh, over the past 2 years, I kind of actually been numb to the cancellations. They'd actually kind of become ho-hum because, honestly, they were just happening constantly. One cancellation would go into another, But then, really, what it boiled down to was the cancellation of Frank Miller and why and how it went down. Followed by just in very short order, the at least attempted cancellation of Matt Damon for comments that he actually used to make. And then Brandon Graham, who evidently is being gone after a second time, which really actually stems from the fact that he was one of only about 4 or 5 high-profile comic creators that actually came to the defense of Frank Miller. And actually, it even, the more I think about it, kind of dates back to just a couple of days before Frank Miller, when they went after Rick Remender, which severely backfired when they found out that the charges being levied at him, I guess you would say, were totally unfounded and completely 100% false. But the reason why these events over this past week and weekend really hit me was the inevitability of cancellation. There's a reason why the title of this video is "You're Not Paranoid If They Are In Fact Out to Get You." So I decided, you know what, since in all likelihood somebody listening to this video is going to be targeted for cancellation in one way, shape, or form, I thought I'd give you maybe some sage advice from an old Gen Xer that well, quite frankly, I can't be canceled because, well, I really don't care what the 12 angry, crazy Twitter people think of me, I guess you would say. I guess you'd say maybe I'm pre-canceled, if you will. But there are certain listeners of this channel that do have aspirations of, working in maybe the bigger indie market, if not straight up trying to get into the mainstream. So this is actually something you're going to need to be prepared of, because no matter how liberal or quote-unquote woke you may think you are, at some point in time you're going to accidentally step over the line as far as some of these people are concerned, and they're going to go after you, guns blazing. So really, my first bit of advice is be prepared. It's gonna happen. No matter what, it's gonna happen. And you need to make yourself right with that fact. And the other biggest piece of advice is just shut up. Don't say anything. Just let it happen. Because the one thing that this weekend really, really exemplified is the fact that the timetable for cancellations have moved up so dramatically that in the span of 10 to 12 hours, boom, they are on to their next target. And you're forgotten about. You know, they're quote unquote, their job is done. So just write it out. You know, take a day trip shopping, stay off of Twitter for 12 hours, and, you know, you're good to go. Because the one thing that a lot of these folks that do dogpile in the cancellation circle, I guess you would call it, because you see the same names crop up every single time. But the thing they always fail to realize is canceling somebody on Twitter does absolutely nothing. Not a thing. Worst case scenario, you are inconvenienced for a very short amount of time. And that's even if you're a super high profile creator or a super high profile actor or musician. Unless your quote unquote cancelable, if you will, offense is something illegal. You know, in that case, no. You're going to be facing some serious legal repercussions for your actions. But if you're basically being canceled because you're a jerk, and that's really what it boils down to, you know, like in the case of a lot of folks, Frank Miller, quite frankly, what it boils down to is they wanted to cancel him because he's a jerk and they don't like him. But in those cases, it's going to be a matter of hours, and they're going to move on to their next target so they can continue to chase the likes and the retweets. Because the other thing that I really, really noticed is these folks that are so up in arms over, for instance, Frank Miller going to Thought Bubble, to Thought Bubble UK. They were so up in arms about it, but what happened as soon as it started getting major exposure? They started hyping their projects, ways to give them money, and it became extremely transparent what was going on. This had nothing to do with justice, social or otherwise. It had nothing to do with the person's safety, because I'm sorry, but if you feel unsafe because 60-plus-year-old decrepit Frank Miller is at the con, oh, boo-boo, you need to get a helmet because life is going to be extremely rough. No, they weren't afraid for their safety. Honestly, I don't even know if they were truly offended by the prospect of being around Frank Miller. It became extremely transparent. They were doing it to make money and to maybe get some Twitter clout, if you will. So, when it does happen to you, just recognize that fact. That if you just shut up and you've prepared yourself for the inevitability of it happening, okay, you may have to stay offline for a day. Or at the very least, stay off of Twitter for a day. And then you go on with your life. You know, because screw them. Once again, what are these 12 crazy people on Twitter going to do? Take your birthday away? No, they're not. But it has become a very sad fact of life that even something in the small press, like we all do, that it's inevitable. It's going to happen to some, if not all of us, someday. And my final bit of advice is, whatever you do, even if you're in the wrong, technically, don't apologize. That's the worst thing you can do, because it actually makes it worse. Because the one thing that you need to understand is every single person who has been publicly canceled, no matter what their imagined or real infraction was to polite society, not a single person who apologized has ever been forgiven. Even folks like Rick Remender, who literally did nothing wrong, he was never forgiven by anybody. They just moved on, pretended like it never happened. So that's what you need to do if it happens to you. Pretend like it didn't happen. Because really, it's the one thing that, one leg up, we maybe have on those 12 crazy people on Twitter. we all realize Twitter is not real life. It is just an app on your phone that allows you to communicate with people, but it sure as hell isn't anything like actual real life. So I hope this advice ends up reaching somebody, I guess you call it, in their time of need. When they're in the depths of despair because they're getting dogpiled by people for maybe making an errant comment or not having the right politics, or once again, in the case of Rick, remember, not doing anything wrong at all in the slightest. I hope this video reaches you and maybe helps you get through it. Because the other thing to remember when you got all of these angry, crazy people yelling at you on Twitter, no matter what maybe dark thoughts are going through your head, these yahoos and idiots, and pardon my French, but motherfuckers, they're not worth it. They're not worth the time of day. So yeah, anyway, that's going to do it for today's video. Once again, want to remind you to hit that sub button, ring the bell for notifications. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and feel free to share it on your various social media platforms. And as always, please feel free to leave a comment down below. If you are interested in checking out any of DDC Studios mini comics, or picking up some original art, sketch cards, or sketch covers, hit the Webstore link below. You can also check out our t-shirt shop where we have all sorts of official DDC Studios t-shirts. And also, please, if you aren't already, feel free to follow us on both Twitter and Instagram, where we post all sorts of neat mini comic goodness on a daily basis. So we are going to have another video up for you here in a couple of days, and I promise it's going to be a lot more lighthearted than today's video. So once again, thank you ever so much for listening. We'll talk to you later. Bye.